Imagine stepping back into a world where India, not Britain, is the beacon of wealth and prosperity, a jewel that outshone the rest of the world. Today, we're exploring the transformation of India from being the world's richest country to a land stripped of its wealth and splendor, all under British rule. We'll explore how this jewel of the East was methodically dismantled, its treasures looted, and its people left in despair. This isn't just a tale of the past. It's a narrative that continues to influence the present and future of nations worldwide. Stay with us as we reveal the mechanisms of exploitation and control that led to the dramatic shift in India's fortune, from the luxury of the Mughal Empire to the imposition of the East India Company's policies and the eventual direct rule by the British Crown. We'll uncover the strategic dismantling of a rich cultural and economic powerhouse. It's a story of loss, resistance, and resurgence, echoing the complex legacies of colonialism that continue to shape our world. This story is a lesson in the power dynamics that have shaped our modern world, the resilience of cultures under pressure, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity in the face of adversity. Join us as we explore the unmaking of India, a narrative of riches to rags under British rule, and the enduring impact of colonialism on a nation's soul. Let's take a trip back to before the dawn of British dominion. India was the center of commerce, culture, and craftsmanship that dazzled the world. Its economy was a mix of thriving industries, each an example of the country's innovation and resourcefulness. India's textile industry, known for its exquisite cotton and silk fabrics, was the envy of the globe. These fabrics, woven with unparalleled skill, decorated the courts of Europe and the bazaars of the Middle East. They accounted for a staggering 25% of global trade during the mid-18th century. But India's mastery wasn't just about textiles. The country was at the heart of metal innovation, producing Damascus steel that set the standard for strength and beauty, along with brassware, copperware, and iron tools that found their way across continents. Indian spices and aromatics, including pepper, cardamom, cinnamon, and cloves, were more than condiments. They were treasures that fueled the age of exploration, sought after by empires far and wide for their flavor and medicinal properties. India's shipbuilding powers were unmatched. Bengali ships, famous for their durability and design, were considered superior to their English counterparts. They showed India's advanced maritime technology and understanding of the high seas. This expertise helped found a flourishing trade network that extended across the globe. The Silk Road served as a vital line for transporting goods between India and Europe, while maritime routes connected it to Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Indian sailors, skilled in the art of navigation, used monsoon winds to travel the vast oceans, establishing India as a dominant sea trader. The country's jewelry industry, with its intricate gold, silver, and gemstone creations, also showed India's artistic skills and its citizens' love for beauty. This rich and diverse economy was a mix of regional specialties and talents. It was connected by a complex network of trade routes that allowed for cultural and economic exchange. This era of prosperity showed India's economic might, along with its open and dynamic society. Innovation flourished, and diversity was celebrated. The wealth generated from these industries contributed to a global exchange of ideas, goods, and cultures that shaped the world in numerous ways. Many years later, India fell under the power of the Mughal Empire. Under the stewardship of its key rulers, the empire expanded its territories to become one of the largest and most affluent empires in the world. It was a civilization that attracted scholars, artisans, and traders from far and wide. Akbar the Great rose to the throne in 1556. He was a visionary leader whose policies created an era of unparalleled cultural and economic growth. His reign saw the Mughal Empire expand to cover almost the entire Indian subcontinent. Akbar's emphasis on trade, tolerance, and innovation laid the groundwork for a successful economy and a diverse society. Jahangir, Akbar's successor, further strengthened the empire's trade networks. He created an environment where arts and culture could thrive alongside commerce. Then came Shah Jahan, whose reign became famous for architectural grandeur and stability, even as the undercurrents of economic strain began to surface. However, the empire's path took a decisive turn under Aurangzeb, whose reign from 1658 to 1707 marked a period of decline. Aurangzeb's policies included oppressive taxation, religious intolerance, and costly military campaigns. They began to erase the very foundations of Mughal prosperity. The empire, once a tapestry of diverse cultures and religions, started to fray as Aurangzeb's rule alienated people. The aftermath of Aurangzeb's death triggered a catastrophic power vacuum. The Mughal Civil War, an explosive period of succession wars, further weakened the empire's central authority. This internal chaos provided fertile ground for regional governors and Nawabs to assert their autonomy, carving out semi-independent states and erasing the cohesion of the Mughal Empire. The empire's vulnerability was laid bare in 1739 when Nadir Shah, the Persian ruler, invaded and sacked Delhi. He delivered a crushing blow to Mughal prestige and authority. This event was the beginning of more destruction. Ahmad Shah Durrani's repeated invasion in the mid-18th century worsened the empire's woes, contributing to a landscape of chaos and decline. The final death knell for the Mughal Empire rang with the Indian Rebellion of 1857. It was a widespread but ultimately unsuccessful uprising against British rule. The rebellion's suppression marked not just the end of the Mughal Empire, but also the beginning of direct British control over the Indian subcontinent. But let's take things back a little. The British exploration into India didn't start with conquest, but with the quiet establishment of trading posts. In the early 17th century, the East India Company, a formidable British trading corporation, laid its foundations in India. This marked the beginning of a new era. By 1612, the company had set up its first factory in Surat. This would pave the way for an expansive network of trade across the Indian subcontinent. The company's influence expanded far beyond trade. As it established fortifications along India's coastlines, it shifted from economic activity to political ambition. However, the Battle of Plassey in 1757 and the Battle of Buxar in 1764 were turning points that dramatically changed the subcontinent's destiny. These battles ensured British dominance over Bengal, Bihar, and parts of northern India. They signified the beginning of a systematic transfer of wealth and power from India to Britain. By the early 19th century, the British East India Company had essentially become a colonial power. They exploited the vacuum left by a weakened Mughal Empire. It engaged in a series of conflicts with regional powers, extending its territorial control through a blend of military power and strategic alliances. The company's expansion was a gradual invasion of India's economic and social fabric, laying the foundation for serious changes in its governance and economic practices. After crushing the Indian Rebellion of 1857, the British Crown took direct control of India, signaling the end of the East India Company's rule and the beginning of the British Raj. During the nearly 200 years of British colonial rule, India was transformed. This led to the systematic decline of one of the world's richest countries. The British colonial administration created a series of economic policies and practices that exploited India's resources and dismantled its manufacturing base. Heavy taxes on Indian goods, coupled with trade monopolies, ensured that India's economic output was tightly controlled and directed to benefit the British economy. Traditional industries, which had thrived for centuries, were destroyed as the British tried to eliminate competition against their manufactured products. This economic strategy forced much of India's workforce to shift from manufacturing to agriculture, completely changing the country's economic landscape. Colonial policies were strategically designed to turn India into a supplier of raw materials for British industries and a market for British finished goods. The infamous drain of wealth theory shows how resources, taxes, and profits were systematically sent to England rather than reinvesting in India's development. The British stole its wealth, leaving a legacy of economic problems and underdevelopment. One of the most harmful policies was the forced cultivation of cash crops such as indigo, opium, and cotton. These were essential to the British industrial needs. This policy displaced the cultivation of food crops, leading to widespread famines and food shortages in various regions. The consequences of these famines were catastrophic, resulting in the loss of millions of lives due to starvation and disease. The British also implemented tariffs and trade barriers that favored the import of British finished goods while discouraging or outright prohibiting the export of Indian manufactured products. These policies effectively killed traditional Indian industries, which could not compete with the increase of cheap British goods. The results were economic downturns and social upheaval, as artisans and workers lost their livelihoods and the economic divide widened. But that's not the worst of it. Some sources claim that Britain drained an estimated $45 trillion from India throughout its rule. Yes, trillion. This staggering figure shows just how much the nation was exploited and the economic devastation that British policies caused. They prioritized British economic interests at the expense of India's development. However, not all influences from the British were negative in nature. The introduction of the English language is perhaps the most significant influence of British rule. English has become an essential part of India's governance, education, and international business communication. Today, English is a bridge between India and the world, allowing global trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. The British established a formal education system modeling their own, introducing English medium schools and universities. This system laid the groundwork for an educated elite with institutions such as the University of Bombay, the University of Calcutta, and the University of Madras, established in the mid-19th century. Economically, the British legacy in infrastructure development is undeniable. The railways, established to facilitate troop movement and resource extraction, has become India's lifeline, connecting its vast geography and playing a crucial role in its economic development. Similarly, ports constructed during the colonial era continue to serve as crucial parts of India's trade networks. Cricket, introduced by the British, is now a key part of India's national identity, a passion that unites the country across regional and linguistic divides. Tea, another British introduction, has become a staple in Indian households, with India emerging as one of the largest tea producers in the world. The introduction of modern technologies by the British, such as the telegraph and the printing press, revolutionized communication in India. The printing press, in particular, enabled the spread of newspapers and literature, playing a pivotal role in the social and political awakening of the Indian population. The story of India's unmaking and remaking under British rule is an example of the resilience of its people and the enduring spirit of a civilization that has weathered countless storms. It's a reminder of the complexities of colonial legacy, where the lines between oppression and modernization blur, leaving a history that continues to create debate and reflection.